No.
Hello, Dave.
Because we have Dave Ruden here of the Ruden Report. Before we talk about number one, let's talk real quickly about number five. Fifth anniversary for the Ruden Report.
Went live 5 years ago today. Thank you very much. Thanks for having me on, too.
Nobody knows the FCIAC like Dave.
Right? That's why you get calls every now and then as he's on deadline trying to get his stories out, and he gets calls from the likes of us saying, "Hey, Dave, what's going on with this game from the FCIAC?"
Yeah,
take your calls anytime.
What's going on with this St. Joe's game against Darien? Something that we don't see too often.
Nah, I mean, it was, I guess the best way to put how stunning it was Lou Marinelli's reaction after the game, the new Canaan coach. Lou is self-effacing, self-deprecating. I've seen him joke and laugh even though he's dying inside after losing state championship games. He was stunned. He was absolutely stunned. Everybody was stunned, but I've never seen him like that. St. Joseph just took it to them, dominated in every facet of the game. New Canaan could never get any traction, any momentum going. And I think people forget after that New Canaan actually had 3 interceptions deep in their part of the field early in the game. That could have been a 28-0. It could have been 42-0.
In talking to Coach De La Vecchia today, he was saying he was remembering last year's game because they beat New Canaan last year as well when the expectations were like, right, but they jump out to the big lead in that game, and then New Canaan comes back and they had to pull it out at the end. He's like, at halftime we're going back out on the field 14-0. I'm thinking about all the points I left out, I left on the field. But as it turns out, it didn't matter because the defense, to shut out New Canaan.
The defense was what impressed me the most. Really, really fast. Their defensive front really were beating New Canaan right off the step. Secondary and the linebackers, we knew they were going to be pretty strong. When you go through the preseason, you really don't know that much about linemen. When people ask you to make predictions, you can tell who rushed for how many yards, how many touchdown passes the quarterback threw. You don't really know that much about the linemen, and that's why I'm always a little reticent about going too far out on the limb until you have a couple of games under your belt. But boy, did that defensive line play well. And the offensive line for St. Joseph as well, and they had a couple of guys hurt, and Joe was moving people around, and Summers had more than enough time to find receivers.
Where do you put this St. Joe's team? It's very early in regard to last year's state title team and some of the great teams in the past.
It's way too early. It's premature to say. They played an absolute great game. You need to look at a whole body of work before you start making any sort of comparisons to that. So I don't even think that's not fair to this St. Joseph team, and it's not fair to previous St. Joseph teams. They had a great game. They beat the number one team convincingly, and we'll see what goes on from there. I think there's a decent shot they could run the table and
that's
go
a heck of a
undefeated.
schedule.
Well, considering who they have the week after next, and I want to get to that Darien team in a second, but first, I understand not wanting to make the comparison from St. Joe's to St. Joe's, but you saw the Greenwich team beat Trumbull up.
I wasn't there. No, I was that afternoon. I had somebody there, and I found out a little bit about that game.
I'm just wondering how St. Joe's is comparing to Greenwich, because right now they're 1-2 in the state, right?
I probably shouldn't say this, but I'll get everybody mad. I'm actually one of the people who voted Greenwich number one.
I did too.
Okay.
I did too, because I had Greenwich number one to start the season.
I had Greenwich too. I had New Canaan 1, Greenwich 2, St. Joseph 3, and my feeling was Greenwich didn't do anything to deserve bumping them down.
Yeah.
And I understand they're going to be the counter argument, but they didn't beat anybody like New Canaan convincingly, and I understand that. Yeah. I just sort of felt Greenwich didn't deserve to get bumped down. I moved them up to 1. I voted St. Joseph 2, and I had Darien 3. So
what does that say about can you compare this FCIAC at this point to the FCIAC in years past? Is it just
preseason expectations we're really talking about, and I've never seen. I don't know. You'd have to probably talk to somebody like Sean, Patrick Boley, or Ned Griffin.
And we will.
From a historic perspective.
Why, are they much older than you?
We're all peers, contemporaries.
Real quickly, Dave, talk about Darien. Darien, a lot of people thought they were losing some players, didn't really know how they'd be, and they come out and look so impressive against Ridgefield on Friday night.
They played really well. Again, a team, let's see a little bit more body of work. They played Ridgefield, which is always a solid team, but also rebuilding. But I love the Darien receivers. I just think, and there are 5 or 6 good ones. I said to Rob Trafone after the game, you've had better receivers before, but I don't know that he's had a stable this good where you could look off and Cooper Hancock, who played really well at quarterback, he can go off on his progressions and he can go second, third, fourth, and the fourth guy out there is going to make a good catch if you get the ball anywhere near him. So I thought they looked good. Their defensive line.
Defensively, I mean, you hold Richfield to 1 touchdown, which is what we just saw. That's a
yeah,
pretty good outing.
Their defense looked real good. Their back seven we knew is going to be strong. Connor Fay at linebacker, I love to watch him play.
Yeah.
Bruce Ferguson at safety is terrific. We're going to see what the defensive line does. If the defensive line plays like it did against Ridgefield and continues to, this is a solid. Darian Rob loves that nobody's talking about.
Oh,
Rob loves, the
bet.
three-time defending champion is sort of like an afterthought in the FCIAC hierarchy right now. And he's just going to sit there and, he's probably going to show everybody the polls.
Come December, we might just be talking about him again.
It wouldn't shock me at all. Yeah.